Time for number 2 already. First of all, thank you so much for all your kind words regarding the first video. I really do appreciate that. And there's one little blunder from it that I have to kind of rectify here. I forgot to mention both what my trio is called and what the song was called that first part was lifted from. So that obviously can't stand. My trio is called Cosmic Latte. We have an EP out, Audible Universe. You can stream it wherever you stream your music, or you can go over on YouTube and check out the full performance videos. The song yesterday's part was called The Great Wave, and today's example, which I just played, is the chorus of the song Tinderella. The idea I kind of want to get to today is what I call complementary clusters. Really simply put, a cluster voicing is any voicing that contains 2 or more consecutive second intervals that can be either minor or major. So, for example, A, B, C sharp, or A, B, C, or A, B flat, C, and that's really all the possible combinations of diatonic 3-note clusters. These clusters can have more than 3 notes. They can have as many notes as you want to, but they have to have at least 3. These kind of chord voicings are really dense and colorful. They're super hip with the neo-soul crowd, and they're very popular with keyboarders, mostly because playing neighboring notes on a keyboard is quite simple, whereas it's a little more tricky to do on guitar. Like if you were to play a major one, that sort of works, but already if you go for a minor major one, so a minor second first and then a major second, things become a little iffy, and unless you have hands the size of dinner plates, 4-note clusters and above are completely out of the question. One way to kind of work around that is to use open strings, which a lot of people like to do, and it's super valid. I was kind of looking for a different approach though, because with open strings you're super limited to certain keys, and they're very hard to use in an improvisational context where you kind of have to recall the stuff very quickly and navigate it very quickly. So what I came up with is the idea of just displacing one of the notes inside the cluster by an octave to use what's called a complementary interval to kind of get a similar vibe. It's not exactly the same thing, which is why I don't call it cluster, but a complementary cluster. But let's, for example, take the minor major cluster, this one, and just kick that one note up an octave. Yields this voicing, which I call the complementary minor major cluster. And that was the first chord you just heard in the example from Tinderella, right? The first phrase was, which is really just this voicing and then a sus2 voicing to accommodate the melody. And the second one you heard was a major minor cluster. Again, kick up the bottom note. This kind of thing too. The second one simply being a major add 11 kind of voicing. And already you can kind of hear how these voicings have one distinct advantage over clusters even, because there is a lot of separations between the 2 notes, causing the majority of the rub, like the dissonance or color in this case really, and the melody note. So the melody rings very true and is easily identified, even if you don't like super try to find it in a chord melody kind of setting, which is super useful in this trio context that I play in a lot. After that, there's just kind of this open string passage that has nothing to do with clusters at all, although it also has some tight rubs. And then I go down to this arpeggiated part. And this really is a major cluster, which is the third of the 3 important shapes you kind of have to know if you want to start messing around with this. But instead of kicking the bottom note up an octave to get this voicing, I'm now kicking it down to give me this voicing. So first I have a major 9, and then a major 2nd on top of that. And I just kind of fill that large gap with the perfect 5th, which also helps to stabilize the voicing a little bit and just makes this arpeggio flow a lot better tonally. And then I go up to this thing, which again isn't a cluster at all. And then I actually play a proper cluster, which this time uses open strings, which I just said I don't like doing, but in this instance it really seemed to work out nicely. So that's a major major cluster, and this time a proper one. And that's really it, because after that phrase the whole thing repeats. There's 1 or 2 variations that have nothing to do with clusters, so I guess we'll just leave those out for now. Yeah, these clusters are really, or these complementary clusters I should say, are a really interesting way to sort of spice up your playing, to add some harmonic density and interest to whatever it is that you do, without evoking such a cliché jazz sound, because it doesn't really have that tertiary harmony thing going on, which is really cool, I think. One more thing I think I should mention about these is that they work over a lot of different root notes. I mean, they're just diatonic neighbors, right? So these voicings themselves don't really convey a strong sense of tonal center, but for example, use this chord over a C sharp, which is what's in the bass in the chorus of Tinderella, which kind of makes it a minor 9/11 sound, because you have the 9 up here, the flat 3 there, and the 11 there. You could also do this kind of thing, which gives you sort of a Phrygian modal voicing, although it, now that I hear it, it kind of has more of a first inversion major sound to it, really. And then this one is actually a major 7 sus 9 voicing. This one would be, well, it could be either major or minor, but it has a flat 7 and a major 13. And then this voicing that I'm super fond of as well, sort of a modal Aeolian kind of thing, because it has the 5, the flat 3, and the flat 7. It doesn't have a third, but that kind of thing. So you kind of get the idea. You can move those around a lot. You can superimpose them over a lot of different bass notes, and it can sound pleasant in a lot of different configurations. Yeah, thanks again. Keep spreading the word. I know you've already been at that, but keep doing that. This is good stuff. And hope to see you next time.